It is time for our last video lesson of the night and time for our last video lesson of Unit 5. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to continue solving proportions, and of course our go-to is going to be using cross products. And so now we find that our proportions contain expressions within the ratios. The process is exactly the same. You know how to do everything. So just pay attention, watch and listen, pause and write everything down, and I'm sure you will understand how to solve these proportions. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have 5x is to 3 as 80 is to 12. We want to find the value of x. So we are going to use our go-to cross products, and I'm going to take and go 80 times 3. 80 times 3, and I'm going to do 5x times 12. And I know these are equal. Well, 80 times 3 is 240, and now 5x times 12 is 60x. Now we have our equation that's easier to solve after we've simplified, and we're going to divide by 60 because that is the inverse operation. We're going to divide both sides because that's using the properties of equality to keep the equation balanced, and we recognize that x is equal to 4. It's that simple. That's straightforward. I know you can do it. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving right along to our next example. 7 is to 2 as x plus 1 is to 6. So this time, I'm going to write this out. We got 2 times x plus 1 with that cross product. And of course, 7 times 6 is 42. So I'm just going to do that math that I can do. Now I recognize I have an equation that needs to be simplified. Need to eliminate those parentheses. So I'm going to use the distributive property, and I'm going to go 2x plus 2 is equal to 42. And again, we have an equation we know how to solve just like before. So we're going to subtract 2 first, and we get 2x is equal to 40. Dividing by 2, x is equal to 20. Make sense? Outstanding. I'll tell you, this stuff is like playing a game. It is easy once you know how. And here's our next one. C minus 3 is to 6 as 7 is to 3. Again, using cross products, 7 times 6 once again is 42. And c minus 3 times 3, I'm going to write it this way. C minus 3 times 3. Of course, I need to use the distributive property. And 3 times c is 3c. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. That is equal to 42. Continuing to solve our equations by adding 9 to both sides, I get 51 is equal to 3c. And dividing by 3, c equals 17. So ladies and gentlemen, utilizing all the skills that we have learned and practiced in our previous units, putting them all together now with something we are calling a proportion, a different looking type of equation that we need to solve using cross products, creating an equation that we can solve. Sometimes we got to simplify to solve it first. Sometimes it's very basic and you only have to do one operation to solve. Let's go to our real life application. It says one day 176 people visited a small art museum. The ratios of members to non-members that day was 5 to 11. How many people who visited the museum that day were non-members? Okay, so sometimes it's going to be very important to know what the question is. We want to know non-members. How many were non-members? Starting off, it says on that day 176 people visited the museum. The ratio of the non-members to the the ratios of members to non-members was 5 to 11. So we have members to non-members, and that is 5 to 11. However, they gave us 176 total people. So we've got to rewrite this ratio to represent total people. Otherwise, we're not going to get the right answer. So if members to non-members is 5 to 11, I can write a ratio of non-members to the total number of people using this information right here. I know the number of non-members is 11. I know the total number of people has to be 16. Because this is this is members to non-members. So that has to be 16 when I add those two together. So non-members to the total number of people is 11 to 16. And I can continue to write my proportion by saying, well, how many are non-members to the total number of people that visited? 176. So now that I have written my proportion, of course it's solved the same way we've solved them all. And we have 16x, and we know that 11 times 176 is going to give us 1,936. And of course, finish it off by dividing by 16, and we get that x is equal to 121. So what does that mean? 121 non-members visited the museum that day. So recognizing the information that is given to you and being able to put that into a proper ratio to solve the proportion. All right, moving on to our next one. It costs $270 for 3 people to go on a fishing trip. How much does it cost for 10 people to go on a fishing trip? Wow, this one's a little bit more straightforward. So I'm gonna write my proportion template right away, and I'm gonna say $270 for 3 people. That's my first ratio. And then my question says, how much does it cost for 10 people to go? Well, I recognize that I have dollars on top of my first ratio, so how much it costs for 10 people to go goes on the top, and then the 10 people go on the bottom of the second ratio. And again, we have our proportion that is solved using cross products. 3x is equal to 2,700 dividing by 3. X equals 900, so it costs $900 for 10 people to go on that fishing trip. Moving on to our last example of the night. Before you do your last quick write, it says there are 32 boys in the school play. The ratio of girls to all students in the play is 5 to 8. How many girls are in the school play? Okay, once again, this is kind of like example 16. Kind of like example 16 where we've got to rewrite one of these ratios. Because we know girls to all is 5 to 8. The only thing is they gave us the number of boys, right? They said that's 32. So we want to rewrite this ratio. We can rewrite it a couple different ways. We can figure out how many boys and write a ratio of boys to all, and then find out how many people attended and subtract the 32 from that to get the number of girls. Or we can write a ratio of being the girls to the boys and then solving it that way. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a ratio of girls to boys. So I'm going to go girls to boys. So again, girls is 5. So what would the boys be? Yeah, this time instead of adding them, we're going to subtract. So 8 minus 5, there has to be 3. So there's 5 girls to every 3 boys. Make sense? And now we can write our second ratio in our proportion and say, well, how many girls is that to 32 boys? All right. Now we have our proportion using cross products. 3x is equal to 5 times 32. Well, 5 times 32 is 160. Dividing that by 3, I get 53.3 repeating. And you're going to say, wait a minute. You can't have a part of a girl. You can't have 0.3 of a girl. You're right. So how does that round? That rounds to 53. So that means there has to be 53 girls that are in the play. So girls to boys would be 53 to 32. 53 girls, 32 boys, and I guarantee you, if you're not sure how that simplifies to 5 out of 8, then you need to ask in class tomorrow, because I guarantee you that's the correct answer. And I'll show you how to verify that. And I could even show you doing that proportion the other way, doing boys to all and then finding out how many people attended, subtracting to get the number of girls. Ask that question if you need to know to help it make more sense in class tomorrow. So let's go to our final quick write of the night. Solving this proportion, we have 10 is to 26 as 5 is to x plus 4. Go ahead and write that down and then solve it using your cross products. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions regarding writing and solving proportions, any questions at all, please come to class and ask them. Please, please, please. And of course, always do that double check. Are your notes complete? Have you used the proper effort and attitude? Okay? And of course, always building your character and your intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, always an honor to be with you on a night of learning. I will see you in class tomorrow.